We continue our progressive reading of Pope Francis's collected homilies, meditations, meeting Jesus in the Sacraments. We are in the closing paragraphs of chapter 29, which bears the title Good News of the Family. By way of introduction, I have this image in mind before I share the Pope's thoughts, that perspective for our vision is very important. This guides what we see and how we see things. And it is not only about directions and the horizon, so it's not only about visuals, but spiritually we also need horizons of orientation, a space in which we can meet, which is full of life, where we can be recharged, when we can develop morally. And in our world, the perspective, what is in our consciousness, what is in people's mind, is changing so rapidly. It seems that our world is sped up enormously, and this cyber reality, this technological space dominates everything, in which personal encounters are no longer the same. That's why the Pope, in the closing paragraphs of chapter 29, draws or reminds us of the basic perspective in which our life remains healthy. He speaks to families and married couples, but we can apply it to our own life. He mentions the two stages of family life, childhood and old age. Children and the elderly are the two poles of life, and the most vulnerable as well, often the most forgotten. When talking to people or hearing confessions, the Pope usually has two questions. He asks them, how many children do you have? And do you play with your children? Do you play with your children? And the Pope emphasizes in those conversations that availability is so important. Availability, the availability of a father or mother to their children is so important. Spend time with your children. Play with your children. A society that neglects children and marginalizes the elderly severs its roots and darkens its future. And these days we have been assessing what our culture today is doing. Every time a child is abandoned and an elderly person cast out, not only is it an act of injustice, but also ensures the failure of society. Let us pay attention to what was said here. Every time a child is abandoned and an elderly person cast out, not only is it an act of injustice, but it also ensures the failure of that society. Caring for our little ones and for our elders is a choice for civilization and also for the future, because the little ones, the children, The young people will carry society forward by their strength, their youth, and the elderly people will carry it forward by their wisdom, their memory, which they must give to us all. So, while being active in our lives, while using technology, while being surrounded by the news and the cyberspace, or many cyberspaces as it were, let us cherish the living framework of our life, a culture which pays attention to the children and the elderly. And if we apply it on a personal level, what the Pope asked of young couples and parents, that do you play with your children? Actually, we could ask ourselves, in other words, do we play with our souls? Do we spend time? Do we have time for our souls? Do we let our soul play with God, as it were, plug into a divine life? Let us receive today's communion as a tangible experience of this horizon, of this framework in which our life remains authentic and loving. Let us cherish the encounters of today, the people whom we meet, because when we are meeting others, in particular when we are serving others, when we spend time in the community, it's a genuine graced time, as it were, marked by grace. We could put it even that it's a bio time. It's an organic time spent with God, where our soul has the opportunity to grow, rest, and act.